Okay, hi there, Dr. Matthew J. Trom here. I'm gonna now give a brief lecture on hedgehog concept. Hedgehog concept feeds into values. So we're going to talk in this class about both internal values and external values. But the hedgehog concept is the one that feeds into internal values. So that's what I'll talk about now. So internal values are values of each of the individual members of your group, but also the group as a whole. And these are things that are important to you, and they are basically selected or designed by you to provide drive and motivation to make a product that you are excited about. And so the model that we use to kind of codify these internal values is called the hedgehog concept. Um, so the hedgehog concept comes out of a book by a Stanford professor named Jim Collins. The book was published way back in 2001. It's called Good to Great. Probably one of the most important business books ever written. I highly recommend reading a copy of it just, for your own edification. There is actually a digital copy of it that we have access to associated with the class. So if you want to listen to like an audiobook version of Good to Great, we have access to it. So I recommend that just, for your own benefit. But what Professor Collins basically did is looked at a series of what he described as great companies. And the way that he defined a great company is the company had to outperform the market by at least 10 times over a long period of time. And it, basically outperform other companies in the same market space for a long period of time. And the way that he defined that is he looked at the stock price of the companies, and the stock price had to have like a 10x growth over other companies in that same marketplace for multiple years. I think it was something like 10 years for companies to qualify. So there's some standard companies that you probably heard of that are on the list. So companies like CVS, companies like P&G are on there. And so it's just very interesting. So what he did then was he took all these companies that he was able to identify as these great companies, and he figured out what common themes and practices and policies they'd had in place during these periods of time where they were great companies, and then he basically codified all of that into this book, Good to Great. And so that there's a lot of different features of great companies, but the one that's important for us, at least for this discussion, is this idea of the hedgehog concept. And the way that Professor Collins describes the hedgehog concept is he kind of tells us this parable of the fox versus the hedgehog, right? So the fox is very cunning, very smart, has a lot of tools at its disposal. It's got claws and paws and fangs and fur, and is very kind of conniving and clever. So it can attack problems in a lot of different possible ways, and is usually, pretty successful as a hunter. By contrast, there's the hedgehog, which basically can only just do one thing, which is when it gets attacked, it kind of curls up into this spiny little ball, this defensive position. And it just sits there as the fox kind of attacks it in all these different ways. But the fox cannot kill the hedgehog or eat the hedgehog because the hedgehog is protected by this kind of armor of spines. Um, and that's basically the foundation of the hedgehog concept is the hedgehog is incredibly good at getting into this defensive position, and so good that the fox, despite all of the tools at its disposal, can't defeat the hedgehog when it's in this defensive position. And so that's essentially what we're looking for your company is your company's hedgehog concept, right? Like, what is it that your company does that differentiates it, that drives it, that you are best in the world at, so that you, like the hedgehog, when things go bad, can curl into this defensive position, retract back to your hedgehog concept, and essentially stay alive while you're being attacked by the fox or by the market in this case. So the purpose of the hedgehog concept in the context of design is it's meant to drive you. Again, this is a statement of internal values. So the hedgehog concept is usually never formally shared with or presented to your customer. Actually, in a lot of ways, it is kind of negative with respect to the customer, and so you probably don't want to show the customer your hedgehog concept. But it definitely influences how you approach your customers, and it will also fundamentally influence how your product is designed. So, like a great example of this is in the capstone design class. If students do like a down selection matrix and they have two concepts that pop out of the down selection matrix with identical values, and they come to me and they're like, Dr. Trom, how do we know which one of these to pick? They're both identical according to our down selection matrix. The thing that I'll ask them is which one of these concepts best aligns with your hedgehog concept. That's the one that you want to pick, right? So it can be used as a tiebreaker, but you guys will find once you have your hedgehog concept that it also starts to kind of infiltrate its way into your thinking and will actually guide the direction of your creative ideation and your down selection and your concept generation. So it does have kind of that tie-breaking effect, but also a more foundational psychological effect on how you do your product design. So, um, this is obviously super important. I think actually hedgehog concept is the most important thing that we do in capstone class. So how do you come up with the right hedgehog concept for your product or your company? Well, the way to start is to recognize that the hedgehog concept is essentially the intersection of three independent spheres. So I've got this Venn diagram that represents it here. One of those spheres, this red one, is what is your company best in the world at? What differentiates you from other companies? And this is not like a forward-looking goal, not a strategy, not an intention, not a plan. It's what your company or what your group is best in the world at right now. It used to be when I taught this class long ago, that I would allow student groups to just tell me, what they were best at relative to other groups in the same class. And we've since upped the bar, where groups now truly have to think about and articulate what they're best at in the world. And that's not an exaggeration. What you're best at in the world as a group. Now, initially, this might seem very daunting, right? It might seem impossible. Typically, if you're taking this class, you're a senior engineering student. You might not have an enormous amount of industry experience. So it might be hard to imagine how you could possibly be best in the world at anything. But keep in mind, we are doing capstone design and we are focused on a very specific product that already has a customer identified. And the reason there's a product with a customer identified is because nobody else out there is solving the problem that this product solves particularly well. Right. So hence, we're solving it in ME capstone. So if you take the skills that you have acquired over the past 4 or 5 years of being an engineering undergraduate student, and you map those onto solving this very specific problem that nobody else executes a solution for particularly well, I think you'll find, if you think about it a little bit, that you can actually articulate a set of skills for which you and your company, you and your product are best in the world. It takes a little doing, but you can do it. And I'm going to challenge every group to come up with what that statement of being best in the world actually is. So that's the first sphere. The second sphere is this kind of bright yellow one, and that's passion. So this is basically what gets you out of bed in the morning and brings you to class and keeps you excited and engaged and energized about working on this product. I have to say, passion cannot be manufactured, right? So this can't be something that one member of your group like really wants to go after, and everybody else is just kind of okay, I'll do it if I have to, right? No, this has to be something that gets you genuinely excited to come in and work on this every day because it's a slog to come up with a product that's viable in the market, and so it has to be something that you're excited about. So figure out across all members of your group what it is that you're passionate about and articulate that passion as this second sphere, this bright yellow sphere. The third sphere is economic engine. This one that's kind of an orange color. It's economic engine. So you also have to answer the question, by what mechanism is your company going to be financially successful, right? So how are you going to make money? How are you going to make profit? Um, through the development of this product. And I'll say here, there's sort of two different elements to this. So when you're thinking about your economic engine, you want to maximize your profit per X, and you want to minimize the customer's cost per Y. And it's up to you guys to figure out what X and Y are, right? So maximizing profit, your profit per X, and minimizing the customer's cost per Y are your goals in thinking about what drives your economic engine. So it's not simply a cost analysis, but it's an articulation of what X and Y are in that formulation. Okay, so I really like this slide because it basically shows you what happens if you're missing just one of the three spheres, right? So if you're living here at the intersection between just finding something that you're best in the world at and something that you're passionate about, but missing economic engine, well, that's a hobby, right? It's not sustainable. It's not something that can actually pay for the cost of running the company, paying salaries, paying overhead, right? It's a hobby, not sustainable. So you definitely need economic engine. If you're operating here where you have something that you're passionate about and something that you can actually get paid to do, but you're not best in the world at, this is not a realistic product because somebody else who's better than you at executing your product is going to swoop in and take all of your market share because they do what you do better than you do it, right? So you have to figure out something that you're best in the world at. Otherwise, you don't have a realistic product that can survive competition in the marketplace. The third one is you're over here, you have something that you're best in the world at that drives your economic engine, but that you're not particularly passionate about, right? So it's not something that you're excited about. This is a slog, right? This is something that you are not finding fulfillment doing. You're not excited about it. And it's essentially something that you can't sustain in the long term because you don't have the emotional investment and the excitement to do it well. So that's what happens if you're not passionate about the thing that you're working on. So the trick with the hedgehog concept is to find this sweet spot, the intersection of all three spheres in the Venn diagram here at the middle. That's where your hedgehog concept is. Now, what exactly is a hedgehog concept? Well, it's a very short 1 to 2 sentence statement that coherently pulls all of your values derived from these three spheres together into one coherent, clarifying statement that basically articulates the priorities and vision for your product and your company. The last thing that I'll say about hedgehog concept, and I'm an engineer, so I kind of hate to be hand wavy about this, but um, a good hedgehog concept, typically you know it when you see it, and it's really hard to codify, a good one and what makes one good versus what makes one kind of marginal. But what I found over and over and over again in teaching this class for years, is that when your group hits upon the right hedgehog concept, it's like miraculous, right? It's like finding your life partner or your soulmate. It's you read this very simple, coherent statement, and it pulls together all of your values and all of your vision and all of your passion in just 1 or 2 sentences, and it's miraculous, and you know it when you see it. And I promise you, it's hard to articulate a correct hedgehog concept, but when you do, you and your group will know it, right? And I promise I will work back and forth with you guys. There's an assignment that asks you to develop a hedgehog concept. I will read your hedgehog concepts, evaluate them, and 99 times out of 100, I'll kick the whole assignment back to the group and I'll say, no, you guys need to rethink this. And we might need to iterate 2 or 3 times to get to that kind of miraculous, perfect hedgehog concept. But I assure you, you will get there. It's actually another tenet in Jim Collins's book. It's called the Stockdale Paradox, that basically promises you that if you invest the appropriate amount of time, you will come up with a hedgehog concept for your company and your product. So it will happen. It might take a little work, but we'll make sure that every single group gets there. Okay. So that is all I want to say about Hedgehog concept. That's the end of this lecture. Thank you for your time and attention.